Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 2. Let's pick things up right where we left off. We just finished setting up some of the bare essentials. Some bedrooms, a rudimentary food industry, a bare bones place of worship, even managed to carve out the rooms for our tavern. So let's spend some time finishing things up. First, let's designate the rooms for that tavern. If you remember, the 3 rooms on top are the ones we landed on. The one on the right is the dormitory, the middle will be the meeting hall for some socializing, and the leftmost is our dining hall. You might have noticed that I set the tavern to only allow long-term residents to visit. Maybe later I will open it to outsiders, but I would like to prioritize the needs of our dwarfs for now. We also got a notification that the first dwarven caravan have arrived. Pretty good news, we can finally get some news about the comings and goings around the wider world, and spread the news of our early success to the homeland, maybe attracting a couple more migrants as a result. And here's the envoy. He brings news, and then asks us what we need from the mountain homes. There are a couple things we could really make use of, harder to produce cloth for example, like silk and wool, and maybe a couple pieces of leather from common livestock animals. There are many more things we could have ordered, but whatever we ask for will be provided at a highly inflated price, since they were procured specifically for us. They know we need them, so they ask for a premium. With that out of the way, we can start trading. First, we should tell our dwarves what we need in the trade depot. Whatever we take there will be what we can barter with. I also decided to heed your advice, and expand our stockpile. While we can easily use the different shells and bones from the refuse pile, they will decay when left outside. If we keep them inside, we should be able to use them for longer, plus they will be closer to our workshops. Now we just need to wait for everyone to settle down in the trade depot. The guards got a bit agitated by something, but they will get back and we can start trading. Alright. The most important thing we need right now are those hard to come by items we ordered more of from the envoy. Silk and wool, both in cloth and thread form, and couple cheaper forms of leather. When buying the silk, we should be careful to only buy the cheaper form made by regular cave spiders. The silk coming from giant ones are much more expensive. Unfortunately the caravan didn't bring any wool, but the most important was the silk. When a dwarf gets struck by a strange mood, it's best to keep some of the more specific kinds of materials on hand. When they are asking for cloth, it could be pigtail linen, or cave spider silk, and the only way to know for sure, is to have both, and see which one they take to the workshop. There was a little bit of yarn, but no woven wool unfortunately. And that's it for what we will buy this year. As for what we will offer in return, it's an easy choice. We made a lot of rock mugs, some of them pretty high quality too, so they will be a good trade. In fact, we should give the trader a bit of extra profit for their troubles. Maybe they will convince some dwarves back home to come live with us instead. We had a splint in that bin of goods, one that we brought with us in the first place, but that's it. We can make more if we have to. With the trade concluded, we can take our stuff back inside now. We are in the savannah, and the last thing we need are some grabby animals taking our stuff. Now, with the stockpile room extended, we can place a new one, specifically for shells and bones. They can be used for crafting small trinkets and baubles, but I think I will keep them around for decorating things. In fact, we will use them for exactly that purpose at the end of this episode. As for the outside refuse stockpile, we might as well tell it not to accept these things anymore. In hindsight, maybe it would have been a better idea to just tell it to feed whatever it can into that new stockpile downstairs, so it can still act as an overflow in case that one gets full. The temple can also get a pair of doors now. One of the main things we will do today will be the early decoration of this temple, so this is just the first step. Next, most of the tables and chairs we ordered in the last episode are done, so we can start moving them into the dining hall. What we need to keep in mind, is that one table can only accommodate one chair. So we are going to have 2 rows of tables back to back, and then place the chairs above and below. We might as well start smoothing out the walls and floors in the tavern. That should give a small boost to the attractiveness of the place. I also decided to keep digging down a bit more. I would love to break into the first cavern layer. Spoiler warning, we won't find it today unfortunately. With all the work going on, maybe we should give the mining a higher priority. I don't really know why I got a message that one of these stairs got cancelled. Everything will get dug out just fine without any more input from me. Next on the agenda, a bit of a cleanup. All those chunks of stone are really ugly, so we are going to use an age-old method of getting rid of them. It involves a special zone for dumping. It's different from a refuse stockpile. That is for general garbage. The dumping zone is for things we specifically designate to be dumped. With this special zone designated, we can go into our inventory and check every single piece of stone in the fortress to be dumped with the garbage bin icon. That will ensure that all the stone currently littering our floors will all be piled into that single dumping zone. It's a bit of an exploit, not gonna lie, but a small one all things considered. With all the stone designated for dumping, dwarves with some free time on their hand will now go and start moving them to the dumping zone. I could have placed that zone right next to the stoneworkers' workshop, but that would have been too much. I don't mind using this exploit, but even I have my limits. We have quite a bit of cleaning to do, so it will take the rest of this episode to finish. It will just be something our dwarves will keep doing in the background, while we work on other things. Like the smoothing of the rest of the living quarters. It won't increase the value of the bedrooms by much, but it will help a little. Since we had some migrants arrive in the last episode, I noticed some extra animals running around. Some of them are personal pets, but I would still feel better if they were out in the pasture, where they can graze. If I remember correctly, the birds don't really need to be outside, but might as well assign all of them. Next, let's expand our list of work orders. Instead of requesting a bunch of doors and beds when we need them, how about we keep some on standby? If we have less than 5 of each, the relevant workshops will make 5 more, keeping a decent number of them ready to go at a moment's notice. Also, I forgot a very important thing in the last episode. I told you that if we cook the plump helmet mushrooms, the spawns will be lost. The easiest way to prevent this from happening is to forbid them to be used in cooking, and only allow them to be brewed. Dwarves will still eat them raw, but when we start cooking meals, they will not be used. And just for my benefit, I decided to set up some quick zoom positions, so I can move around important locations with a single button press. Very handy option to have. And here's the first ever intruder in the fortress. A mandrill woman managed to wander into the place, and got into a fight with one of our dogs. A really unfortunate incident, the dog is dead, and we have a wild humanoid creature loose in the fort. This is a similar entity that we saw in the last episode. Only that one was an alligator man. This is a mandrill woman. Basically, a humanoid female, with the head of a mandrill. A primitive creature, who is now disrupting the work of our dwarves. It will keep wandering around, and people will flee from it if they see it. We are already down 1 dog, thanks to her, so to prevent any future trouble, unfortunately we will have to get rid of her. This is where the military comes in. First, we will need to promote someone to be the militia commander, and then assign a couple soldiers under them. I think a couple miners will make short work of the intruder, they have some pointy pickaxes they can use. Once they are activated, we can tell them to target the beast woman, and put her out of our misery. And that's that. Thankfully nobody on our side died, but one of the miners did get a bit of a wallop, so maybe it's time to set up a hospital. But it's not as bad as what the poor creature received. In the last moments, she got pummeled in the head so much, that it eventually broke her neck. Such a shame. I prefer not hurting the natives if I can avoid it, but this time, she was a clear danger to our animals. As I've said, one of our dwarves got pushed around a bit, and is now struggling to stand. To get a clear picture of their wounds, we will need to set up a hospital. Between the temple and the manager's office should be a good place. In the meantime, it seems the dwarf managed to shake off the confusion, and is now able to stand. Still, better to have them checked out. We should also allow corpses to be dumped into the refuse pile. We have a dog and the mandrill woman still lying in the corridors, and the last thing we need is them to start decomposing there, and stink up the place. I'm still new to this military interface. Maybe I should look up how this new one works. The old one was clunky, but it was also self-explanatory. It also doesn't help that the smoothing is the same priority as the digging jobs. Alright, time to start placing the hospital beds. It's the same process as the temple and the tavern. We will place a dormitory room, and convert it into a hospital. Apart from beds, we need a couple more things. First, we will need a container, where we will store the different tools and materials needed for the hospital to function. Thread for suturing wounds, crutches, splints, gypsum for casts, things like that. Most importantly, we should tell our chief medical dwarf that from now on, his one and only job is to work in the hospital. No more menial jobs for them, their entire life will revolve around the hospital. Except for one thing. I will forget to assign them to the hospital. So while they are the chief medical dwarf, they don't know where to work. Oh well, something to fix in the next episode. Also, technically, they are still our manager and bookkeeper. I couldn't find those jobs in the list, so I assume they will still be done, when they are not busy in the hospital. We also need to tell them not to do anything they are not assigned to do. That should ensure that they are on call all the time, so to say. But as I've said, I didn't assign them to the hospital, so while the miner that got knocked in the head do end up leaving the hospital, it would have been better if we managed to diagnose what was wrong with them exactly. Here, I was trying to play around with the bookkeeping precision, just to see if they would still do that job, but it was already set to the maximum, so it was pointless. But later on, new work orders will end up being validated, so he will keep doing those jobs regardless. I thought it was time to start setting up some workshop stockpiles. They are basically small drop-off points for raw materials, so the workers don't have to go all over the place to pick up the resources. They will be brought in by others, making things get done much faster. To get started, I just went with a stone and a wood storage next to their respective workshops. And I decided it was time to start making stone blocks. They will allow us to make use of all the stone we mine much more economically. Right now, if we used raw stone for a project, we would use a whole boulder for it. But if we start cutting them into blocks, then one stone will be made into several blocks, and a single block can take the place of a whole raw stone chunk in construction projects. I sent out a work order, so if we have less than 50 stone blocks, then make 10 more. That should be plenty enough for any early projects we could think of. Next, we should make those traction benches for the hospital. It will require 2 mechanisms, 2 tables, and 2 ropes. I didn't realize yet, but we used all the tables, so we will have to make more later. But the mechanisms should not be a problem. Next, I thought it was time to start thinking about what would happen if we had an unfortunate accident. We got lucky with the first intruder, but the next incident might turn out to be more serious. So it is time to start working on the catacombs. I thought it would make sense to treat it as an extension to the temple. And since we are digging the receptacles, might as well order the coffins too. The usual setup will do. If we have less than 5 empty ones, just make 5 more. While all that is being worked on, how about we finish up the bedrooms? We need more doors, but thanks to our work orders, they should be made without any more input from us. I thought the traction benches would be ready at this point, but as it turns out, we had no free tables available for the job. Should be easily remedied, just order them directly, and give them priority, so they are done before anything else. Okay, let's make those traction benches already. We can also start placing the coffins in the catacombs. And it seems we ran out of wood in the meantime, so it's time to cut down some more. Just make sure we don't overdo it. While the dwarves and the elves are not exactly friendly with each other, it's better not to put fuel on the fire if we can avoid it. At least not yet. Anyways, the traction benches are finally done, and can be installed in the hospital. In the future, we just need to add a couple extra tabled for surgeries, and the hospital is more or less done. Now, the temple. I checked and we have plenty of blocks ready to go, so I thought we could start by placing some floors. More specifically, we have some dark jet and some lighter gray mudstone blocks. They will be the perfect pairing for this room. First, we need to get rid of the altar, so we can deal with the floor under it, and install it again when it's all done. I think we can use the dark jet stone blocks as the main walkway in the temple. They will be leading from the entrance to the altar. For the rest of the room, we will use mudstone. Unfortunately, we ran out, so we will need to make more to finish the room. I will deal with that later. And the altar is back where it belongs. I think you get the idea. Later on, I will end up taking it down again, just so we can decorate it with some of the mussel shells we have piling up in the warehouse. Because why not? I also went ahead and ordered some wooden chairs. They will be the pews in the temple, so dwarves can sit down while they are praying and meditating. In the future, I will most likely mine out the walls of the temple, and replace them with walls made out of stone blocks. They will result in a much more uniform aesthetic for the room. And since the coffins are automated at this point, we can keep adding them to the catacombs. Speaking of, we can also start designating individual tombs there. Each little alcove will be a tomb, where regular dwarves can be interred. Later on, more high-ranking dwarves will likely ask for more opulent tombs for themselves. That will have to be done on an individual basis. Since we don't have doors separating these tombs, we have to do them one by one unfortunately. I could have just made them deeper, and placed doors, but that felt a bit much for this. We can also start cutting raw gemstones, so they can be made more valuable. In the meantime, the wooden chairs got made, so let's place them in the temple. That's kind of nice. I think the walls on the side can be used for some statues or maybe for slabs, in case a dwarf gets killed, and we cannot retrieve the body. Just to ensure that we can finish flooring the temple, I decided to order a couple mudstone blocks. It seems the mason doesn't want to use them anymore, so let's help them out. We also have a dwarf who is a bit more sad than the rest. It seems he was a bit more shaken up by the mandrill woman incident than most, and was a bit miffed that he had no time to worship his deities. But those problems should go away soon. Next, I think we should start thinking about the tavern a bit. Right now, dwarves have to go all the way to the top, pick up their drinks, and bring it down to the tavern. If we had drink stored in the tavern itself, that should help with that. We also need to make a container, so we have somewhere to store the mugs in the establishment. A stone coffer will do nicely. I think 20 mugs will be plenty enough. This new stockpile can be told to use the upstairs storage as a source for its deliveries, so whenever possible, it will be kept full with booze. Also, thank you autosave. That should do it. We have dwarven wine, and a bunch of rock mugs right where all the drinking happens. Just as Armuk intended. We should have enough mudstone blocks now, so let's finish flooring the temple. There. A nice clean looking place of worship. Far from finished, but it's a start. Now, before we sign off for today, I really wanted to do something, and that is the decoration of our altar. The reason why it will take so long is the peculiar situation the altars are in when it comes to categorizing them in stockpiles. Unfortunately, they occupy some obscure category, and even though I was confident about which one it is, it seems I will be mistaken, and end up doing a process of elimination in the end. Anyways, we finally managed to finish the bedrooms. At least for now. They are still lacking some storage for the possessions of our dwarves, but this is a good start. I also told the outside wood storage to start supplying the small stockpile near the carpentry shop. Similar to the stone pile near the masons. As for the altar, I think we should make use of those shelves we've been stockpiling lately. First, we will need to set up a dedicated storage for the item we want to decorate. This is where that category issue comes in. I was fairly convinced that altars are filed under the entry, other large tools, but for some reason, this won't do what I needed. Anyways, time to uninstall the altar. To make sure we only decorate what we want to use our precious shells on, we need to restrict what the workshop has access to. And that involves using that function of the stockpiles, that allows them to only take from, and give to, where they are allowed. So, if we set up a storage that can only store very specific items, we can use that to only decorate those, and nothing else. Since the category I was confident in didn't turn out the way I wanted, it was time to narrow some other parameters. The altar itself was a well-crafted one in terms of quality, so maybe we should set that as one of the criteria on the stockpile. Also, it was made out of claystone, so that can also be used as a limiting factor. I was fairly certain that the stockpile links were set up correctly, so that shouldn't have been the issue. Just to test, I went ahead and even disabled the storage of those specific kinds of items in the main storage, but no luck. So it wasn't the case of the stockpile links. Then I started to slowly add in some categories that might help find the category the altars are stored under. In the end, I just added claystone as a material restriction, enabled everything to be stored, and started narrowing things down. We got a door. So that is something we can safely exclude. There we go. We got the altar delivered. We still don't know which category they are stored under, but let's not look a gift horse in the mouth. I just set up the links for the altar and the shells for the workshop and asked for an item to be decorated with those shells. And it's done. Our plain looking little altar is now encircled with bands of mussel shells. That should increase the value of our temple a little. Time to put it back where it belongs. And that is it for today. Another productive session. We managed to buy some stuff from our first caravan, set up some extra facilities, like the tavern, the catacombs, and managed to make our generic little temple a little better. Anyways, thank you for watching. If you liked the video, then leaving a like and subscribing to the channel just might motivate me to make more. If you are more in the donating mood, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page in the description, where you can buy me a glass of water. I don't really drink coffee. Thank you for your support, and until next time, I will see you later.